How do you develop your growth group leaders? What are you aiming for? What areas do you focus on? Doesn't matter. Development of real people can sound really hard. So that's what we're going to be talking about and tackling in this video. But we've got to ask, where do we want to develop our leaders in? What areas? Well, here's three of them. Character, conviction, and competence. Now, character is key. It's who you are, living out your true identity as a loved child of God. Now, we're all on this journey of becoming more and more like Christ. We do want to be like him, and that's character. 2, convictions. It's what you believe and how it impacts you. So Paul, interestingly, he often prays and requests to God to increase the knowledge of Christians. Increased knowledge changes how we live because convictions actually impact character. So Romans 12:2 says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That's conviction. Now thirdly, competence is skills and ability. See, God uses our gifts for the good of the body. In Acts 14 verse 1, Luke says that it's because Paul taught so effectively that people believed. Now, God's sovereign and changes people's hearts, but the sovereign God chooses to use us. He uses our gifts and skills for his purposes. So we actually expect when a growth group leader gets better at leading, that more people will be more mature in their group. Now, as CLs, we often have more to do with the area of competence. Normally, we'd get along to a growth group, we'd spot some things to chat through to help develop competence. Now, that's all fine and we should keep doing that. But we really care about each person. And more important than someone's competence is their convictions and character. So we want to think about our place as CLs in developing all three areas. And it's also worth recognizing that we have the preaching each week. We have other ministry teams and other Christians at church that help develop all three areas. But what can you do as a CL to develop our growth group leaders in their character, their convictions and competence? Well, here's a framework to help us. It's now, where, how. Now, it's pretty simple. We could probably use it in any area of life where you want to improve something. So the now, it's the current reality. What's the competence of this leader? What are their convictions? Are they missing key things? Or are they nailing it? What's their character like? The where, it's where do you want them to be? What's the goal? If there are issues, what would it look like if they were addressed effectively? Where do I want this leader to be in character, in conviction, in competence? Now the how, it's what are the steps to get them to that goal? Now, where, how. It's pretty basic, but just talking about this can help you see why visiting groups and just rubbing shoulders with growth group leaders at church, it's absolutely necessary. It would be so hard, probably impossible, to know the reality, the now, if you never saw a study that a leader led, or if you didn't know them very well. So getting a firm grip and understanding of the now is essential to coming up with goals that are relevant and plans that will work. Developing leaders means knowing where they are at to plan to move them forward. So let's think about this framework with 2 examples. So the first example, you organise a visit. You chat about the things that the leader wants some help with, and they mention that they're really keen to get more people contributing to the discussion. So you visit the group and you notice that what the leader does is they talk a lot. It's not quite a sermon because they do ask some questions, but then the leader just talks a lot about the answers they came up with the question. So you think, well, what's the now? The reality is the study isn't super engaging. People aren't motivated to chat because they know the leader's just going to give them the right answer. So people tune out. They aren't learning like they could be. That's the now, but where do you want this leader to be? Where do they need help? Well, you want them to be able to run a more engaging study. It seems to be mainly a competence issue, so you try and think about, well, what would help them? And for this example, there's a really good module on the Growth Group Leaders website. So you realise the next step is probably to chat about your reflections and work out a plan that involves the module. So you catch up and you say, hey, look, I noticed what you said. People don't seem to be super engaged. What do you think the reasons for that might be? And hear their reflections. And then you might say, well, there's a great module that addresses these exact issues. Let's work through it. What's the best way for us to do this? Work out the best way for you to do that. And then you say, okay, well, I'll visit again in a few weeks and we can try and apply these things together and I'll give you some more feedback. So you start giving feedback around that module. There's the now, the where, and the how. Now, it could be that as you do this training, you realise that there's more than just a competence issue. It might be a conviction about what a leader needs to be. It might be an insecurity about not being able to let go of control with their group. So as you hit this competence issue, it might be that there's convictions or character issues to address. But almost always, this will come up as you start with a competence issue. We don't need to assume that everything's always connected to some deep-rooted sin. We don't need to assume the worst of our leaders. So give them a benefit of the doubt. And the bigger things will come up as you address the smaller issues. Second example, now, where, how. You've organised your termly catch-up with a leader. You get together and it becomes clear they just don't know 4 people in their growth group. Now, it's a newish group. They haven't been around much. There hasn't been much chance to develop relationships. And now they've stopped getting messages. They stopped getting responses from these 4 individuals. So there's a bit of the now, but it might be worth pushing a bit deeper and asking some more questions to help get the now right before working out the solution. So you ask about, when did they come? How did that go and how did they follow them up? And so maybe it turns out for this leader, they only messaged once and it was just the first time they weren't there. And then they assumed that they didn't want to talk to them anymore, so they stopped messaging them. So is this competence? Is it conviction? Is it character? It could be all 3. So you ask more questions. Would it be worth messaging them again? Or have you tried to catch up with them in person to build some friendship? And they might say, oh yeah, I could give that a go. It was just a simple competence issue. They weren't sure about the skill of how to help build relationship. Or they might say, I'm not sure I want to do that. Maybe that's a conviction, maybe they aren't that fussed on whether people are in a growth group or not, and they're not sold on its value to a person's Christian's life. But you can see that just asking these questions helps you work out the now so that you can then decide what is the where that we want to get to and how we're going to get there. There's 2 examples of the now, where, how framework. Now, it's helpful to know that you are not in this all on your own. The leaders themselves, they'll really likely have really good reflections on where things are at and how they can improve them, and different areas that they want to improve in. Now, your network leader is there to help you. They might have a whole bunch of other resources that they have there to help as well. And there's actually a stack of really good training videos for basically every area of competence that a growth group leader will come across. But as a group of CLs, let's be praying and working towards the development of our growth group leaders for the glory of God. I'll see you later.